And really branding at the end of the day for a personal brand is, what's that problem you solve in the world? What's your message? Who's your ideal client? We can't serve 7.8 billion people. So having the clarity component is massively important in being able to hone in on someone's personal brand.
Welcome back to the Regenhard Report. We have a special guest today, Kristen Cullen, and what's really interesting about what Kristen does is she talks a lot and helps different businesses with personal branding, mindset, the whole shebang to really take your business to the next level. And Kristen and I had an amazing conversation. We got connected through other business owners, and I wanted her on as a guest today and on the podcast to share some of the wisdom that she shares with her clients. So Kristen, welcome to the Regenhard Report.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Kristen, what do you do?
So in a nutshell, I am a resiliency mentor and a certified personal brand strategist.
Awesome. So when you say personal brand strategist, explain to the audience and explain to me, what does that mean in a business world?
So I don't brand businesses, I brand people. So people who are in business for themselves, typically a service-based business. A realtor is a great example of that. Doctors, authors, coaches, attorneys, anyone in the health and wellness space, whomever is in business for themselves and markets themselves as a service, those are my clients.
So I feel like that's changed so much over the last 10 years, right? Like everyone was like, I'm going to grow this business. This is my, domain. This is the face. I want this business name in front of everything. Mm-hmm. And now it's switching so much to a personal brand. Hint, Regenhard Report here, right? But it's moving so much, and I've listened to some successful individuals that talk about it, Ryan Pieta, different people like that, Alex Hormozi, and at the end of the day, they're building a personal brand. So when did you see that shift kind of happen from more business now to, yes, they're running and operating businesses, but now it's personal brand? When did that happen?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I actually started doing personal branding back in 2011. But we didn't call it personal branding back then. We just called it branding. It wasn't really identified as a personal journey. And it really was born out of the big recession between 2008 and 2011, 12 in the real estate industry. And coming from the Detroit metro area originally, big three automotive based, and a lot of people that were in the corporate world in automotive were taking early buyouts. And I identified a need. And so people were transitioning from, making huge salaries, getting huge severances, and thinking, hey, it would be fun. I'm going to start my own business and do what I've always done, but I'm going to do it for a bunch of people, and had absolutely no idea how to market and brand themselves. And
because they were behind a company, right?
They were behind a company, and it's always easy to hide behind a title, a corporate name. Yeah. Personal branding is incredibly, incredibly vulnerable and uncomfortable for some. And it's really not self-promotion. People are afraid of coming off as arrogant or self-promoting. And really, at the end of the day, personal branding is all about how can I communicate to my ideal client how I can help them and serve them. It's really based in service.
So I'm supposed to just talk about what I sell the whole time?
No, not necessarily. It's really how you can serve them. And that's a little bit different. It's about making an impact.
Exactly. Don't just sell yourself the whole time, or don't just try to sell your product the whole time.
Exactly.
It's big picture, right?
It's really about how can I help you, but also have the experience be an impactful experience, make a difference. And really the goal is with personal branding, I call it the exponential effect. It's when you can help someone identify how they can serve others at a higher level, and then they help multiple people, and then they help multiple people. It's really one person at a time making a positive impact in the world.
Awesome. Okay, so hypothetically, someone's out there, a business owner, and they've been hiding behind ABC Plumbing, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're a realtor, or whatever, right? And they're a business ready to kind of venture into personal branding. What are kind of the first few steps from a mindset standpoint, and what do they got to do to enter the world of personal branding?
Great question. So the foundation of any personal brand is someone's personal story. So the very, very first thing I do when I sit down with a new client is I ask them, I interview them, tell me all about your journey, whether from childhood on. I'm really curious. The more I know about you, I can serve you at a much higher level. And I can identify the things that stop you. We tend to self-sabotage.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to have imposter syndrome when we get there.
Yeah.
And we really get in our own ways. And so I created the Remarkable Resilience program after identifying a need. It didn't really matter how successful my clients were. It didn't matter how much money they had in the bank. At the end of the day, if they didn't believe in who they truly are, it's very, very difficult to empower them. It's very difficult to have them own their greatness. And it's really difficult to brand them at a higher level. And really, branding at the end of the day for a personal brand is, what's that problem you solve in the world? What's your message? Who's your ideal client? We can't serve 7.8 billion people. So having the clarity component is massively important in being able to hone in on someone's personal brand.
How does personal brand, like branding, different from business or corporate branding?
In some ways, they're very similar. So I'll give you an example. When I see, or when you see a swoosh, we know it's Nike. They have such solid branding and identity and, just do it. We know it's Nike. In some ways, it's similar. It's looking at, but it's someone's face. It's someone's name. You don't get to hide behind some kitschy, cool, sexy title. The problem we have in our society is the wittier we can be, the cooler we can be, the more sexy we can be, we're going to sell it. And that's not necessarily true. In the world of personal branding, Andrew is the brand. Kristen is the brand. And it's extremely exposing.
Yeah.
And so you have
Aren't
to
people
be
scared?
Absolutely. You have to be consistent across all faces. So the old adage, you have who you are in the business world and you have who you are in your personal life does not apply in personal branding. You've got to be consistent all the way through so that there's no confusion about who you are and what you're all about. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And
so let me ask you that, because let's
Sure.
dive in that, because I know a lot of realtors that struggle with that. They're like, but I might like to do this, or I might go out on the boat, and I'm worried that if I post, then my clients are going to think I'm not doing, enough for their, their house, or, all that kind of stuff. They struggle with the personal life and then the professional life, and then they're like, but I don't want to be a fake, right?
sure.
They don't want to be representing like, hey, I'm a fake here, but they also don't want to almost divulge too much that could negatively impact them. So thoughts on that, on how to balance the two?
Yeah, when it comes to social media, the thing that people have to understand is that it's actually not your biggest tool. Even though it gives you exposure, you don't own it. You own your email list. You don't own your social media followers. That changes from day to day. The rule in social media when it comes to personal branding is about an 80-20 ratio. 80% all about how you can serve others, 20% about your personal stuff. If you're going to, for example, not saying that anyone in particular would, but let's say you're a realtor. Let's use that as an example. A lot of your listeners are realtors, and you have this solid reputation, and you're a producer, and you've got this amazing team. And then you go out on the weekend and you have this huge party, someone's celebrating something, and there's all this social media posting about you getting drunk or over partying or whatever the case may be.
Right.
That can actually really hurt your brand.
Right.
So it's really important that you're mindful on what type of content you put out into the world on social media. And it's not about being fake. It's about being discreet. There's a difference. Do you. It's totally fine. But be really mindful. And so actually we work on an entire year of content of a social media plan. And really that's founded in the questions that your ideal client may have.
Right.
Trickle in some personal stuff, watching the sunset, being with your family or your friends, getting married, those types of things, because those are the types of things that help people connect with you as well.
100%. And I actually experienced that last night, right? Like I was at an event and I saw a lot of, potential, let's say clients, different past clients, different people. And we talked about that, they said, oh, you got married, you did this, all that kind of stuff. And so, that personal experience, right, as we would call it, led to a lot of opportunities that might turn into business.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's a positive. But I understand what you're saying. Now, let me ask you a question. If we use that example with a realtor that, hey, yeah, went and partied and whatnot. Hey, everyone, likes to have, let's say fun or cut loose, or that's some people's, vice or whatever, right? How do they balance that? Like, because they still want to maybe post that it was a celebration, right? Is it posting maybe photos from like earlier in the night and it's not really the drink? Like, how do they balance it?
Yeah, if that's an important component to how you want to put yourself out into the world, absolutely be mindful and really talk to those who surround you. Mm-hmm. I had a client who was really mindful about how they posted their personal life. They went on a bachelorette trip and they weren't really clear with those that they surround themselves with. Listen, I really don't want you posting anything with me in it. And it was devastating to her. And did it destroy her brand? It didn't. In the long run, people forget. But it was something that she didn't want to have included. She did not want her clients seeing her, drinking and partying and doing all the things. And so you have to be mindful
all the
about
objects at a bachelor party.
all the typical objects.
Right.
But you have to be mindful too about the people you surround yourself
100%.
with.
You're the average of your 5 best friends.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've created a personal brand, and we're starting to create a personal brand. Let's say, how different of an impact can a personal brand be on a business leader compared to a corporate brand, and how much can that allow as they expand, maybe with other ventures and different things like that?
Yeah. So one thing to remember: think about it this way. A personal brand is like the cog of a wheel. So Andrew is the nuts
hub and the cog.
The hub
Okay,
and the
yeah.
cog. Okay, and all the spokes are an extension of all the different things that you may do. Andrew as a husband, your new husband. Andrew as a business owner. Andrew as a magazine editor owner. Andrew as a videographer, all the different
Kobe, that's video.
things.
I just assist Kobe.
Okay.
You do not want me behind the camera.
But it's the cog, the nuts and bolts. You are the stability. You're the foundation. Without that being real clear and tight, the wheel's not going to turn. Now, let's say you decide to sell your magazine one day. That personal brand stays consistent.
Correct.
So it's not much different than a leader in a business. If their personal brand as a leader is solid, and those who work with them, not under them, I like to say with.
100%.
And let's say they get really clear on their own personal brand, and it's really in alignment with the leader's personal brand, then it's like a lean operating machine. But when there's disconnect and misalignment between brands under a business umbrella, it becomes really, really clear.
Right.
Now, a business entity, you can have your mission statement and you can create your culture and all of the things, but at the end of the day, the leader is really what drives the machine.
100%. From the top down.
Absolutely.
Look at The Rock, right?
Great example.
Did he really think tequila was in his wheelhouse?
Yeah. So when we talk about personal branding, we live in a time of really solid personal brands, and we live in a time of personal brands that have zero substance. I'm not a big fan of the term influencer. Let me know what you bring to the table. Let me know how you can make a positive impact on the world. So the Rock, Dwayne Johnson, great example. So when we think about him, we think about a lot of different things. But it's about getting really clear on one lane, becoming known for that, and then adding to that. So he really actually was known as a football player first. Yep. Some people think, oh, no, he was a wrestler. No, that came second. And then he made a name for himself as a wrestler, and then he made a name for himself as an actor, and then he made a name for himself really as a health and wellness and fitness longevity guy, and then brought on Terramata and all the things. The Rock have a solid following because he's built trust over the years. And he, at the end of the day, his persona is he makes a difference in the world. He gives a lot back to his community and charities. And that's a really great example of a solid personal brand.
And from a success standpoint, look how much that tequila brand from an overnight pretty much success, right?
Yeah.
Because it had the backing of a personal brand.
That's right.
Or a one that I thought was very impressive was Gary Vee. You know, he built so much, he put so much time into his family's wine company online, different things like that. He built up this NFT world kind of thing. And then when he dropped it and he used the personal brand from that, he made probably 20 million overnight because of the work of the personal brand and leading up to it.
That's right.
So you probably can say this a lot better than I, but it's not instant gratification with personal brand, right?
Slow and steady. This is not, it's definitely not a race. It's, if someone thinks they're going to build a solid personal brand in a month, no. It takes a good solid 12 to 24 months to properly launch a personal brand, get everything set and planned out. And it takes time to cultivate a reputation. And again, going back to what we were speaking about earlier, it takes time to build a solid personal brand, but it takes only moments to destroy it.
It does.
So you've got to be really mindful if you're going to put yourself out there.
One of the things, in a business, obviously we're talking a personal brand, right? Is kind of getting to that next step to be able to maybe have the time for building personal brand, right? And a lot of our audience are owner operators of a business, and they're, in the business, not out of the business looking at it, right? They're actually grinding and doing the work. When you work with these individuals and growing a brand and coaching them, how does someone go to that next step where they are able to bring people on so that they can now build the brand, go out, network, build a reputation and everything like that?
That's also a great question. A lot of times people who are in business for themselves tend to be lone rangers. They might build out a small support team. And what's important is going through the process of identifying the things that you're great at, the things that you excel at, and the things that you choose to build a business upon is really important to identify the things that you'd be better off hiring someone else to do for you. I'll give you a great example. I've always worked for myself. 23 years before I brought it on just a virtual assistant. And I needed her to manage my schedule and booking my calls and my emails. Because I managed 3 different email lists, my personal, my family, and my business. And she came on and I said, listen, I don't even know what to ask you to do for me to help me. But I know that if I get freed up from managing those things, then I'm available to serve more people. So I'm willing to make the investment. And it's not a big investment in supporting yourself and building your business. You cannot scale your business without a team. You just can't do it.
Right.
You're one person. And the first week, I had an email, and I'm an instant communicator. I'm glued to my phone, which is not necessarily a healthy practice. And I've worked really hard on that, on letting that go. And I instantly responded to an email that came in, and I got a text message from her. And she said, if you do that again, I'm going to block you from your emails. You need to allow me to screen your emails, answer on your behalf, and only give you the ones that you have to respond to. It's so important to free up your time. And she was right.
It's the only thing we can't get back.
No, we can't. And really the commodity is time. Yeah, it's not really at the end of the day. And when I work with people, and I say this, if I ask someone, what's your goal? And they say, I want to make $10 million this year. I say, I'm not your person. But if they say, I want to impact 1 million lives in a positive way and make $10 million doing it all day long, I'm there to help you build that business. And it's really important for people to understand at the end of the day, really the commodity is time. We want more freedom to do all the things, to spend time with our families and our loved ones and our partners and our friends. To be able to do all those things takes time and money.
Right.
But the money is just a tool.
It is. So that's why it's like to to the small business owner, push hard, grind really hard till you get that extra bit of income that you can then delegate to
Absolutely.
someone. And then it's just a, 10% here investment will get you 20% back on time. 10 more percent, right? As you keep growing, gets you 20% more. And it's just, a compound thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, all right, we've talked a lot about personal brand, and I think that's something I could talk about to, literally all day. We talked about the businesses, but I want to ask you this. You work with a lot of different clients, right? What is the single biggest struggle your clients and or entrepreneurs, business leaders deal with on a daily basis?
I think without a doubt, clarity. And what I mean by clarity is I have people that may come to me really frustrated. They may have already invested a lot of time and money into building a personal brand and really not gotten anywhere. And really what that comes down to is the lack of clarity on who their ideal client is. That's number one. If you don't know who you're serving and you're just throwing out a bunch of content, hoping something sticks, I say it's like, blowing sand in the wind. It just doesn't have any real result or effect. If you get really clear on who you're serving and how you can really serve them, what's that main problem you solve? What's your message to them? That's when things start to transpire into growth, scaling, monetization. It's all very systematic, but lack of clarity is the biggest problem. People tend to want the world to think they can do it all. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. And
the yes people.
Absolutely. And because we want to impress, we want to bring in business. And so a great example of that is saying yes to every opportunity. Well, what happens is unless you're clear and you're saying yes to every opportunity, when you're saying yes to every opportunity, you're saying yes to some things that really are not in alignment with your brand. And when you're doing that, you're simultaneously saying no to the things that are. And so it's a very methodical journey. And so I tell people just to take a deep breath, back up, let's look at the whole picture. And again, pick a lane and then go from there. And everyone's afraid of picking the wrong lane. Well, if you own it, if you're really good at it, if it's something that brings you joy, that's really important. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's your thing.
Right.
I'm really good at sales. I don't want to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. It's just a tool. I really look at what brings my clients joy and then build a business from there. So it's really the lack of clarity.
Interesting. So with a new client or someone that is lacking clarity, what are the first few ways for them to identify maybe their lane or identify the lack of clarity they have right now and get them kind of on track?
So I would tell them these things. Sit down, pull out a journal, your computer, however you collect notes, and really do a deep reflection on the things that you're really good at. What are the things that people recurringly come to you for in your personal life, in your business life? What are the things that you excel at? And then look at the things that you excel at and what are the things that bring you the most joy first. That's where you're going to build your brand. That's where you're going to build your business because it's going to be effortless. Not that building a brand doesn't take work. It takes a lot of work, but when you love what you do, it's much easier to go ahead and build that business and that brand out. So I think it's really important to reflect on all the different touch points of what makes you you and how you can serve.
And when we're going to go back to something you said earlier, personal brand takes a long time, right? With that being said, let's talk about how impactful after the 12, 18, 24 months of building up a personal brand is. And I bet you have some stories of people that have got kind of given up at the 6 months mark, the 10 months mark, and they're almost there. How critical is it to continue to believe in yourself and continue, even though, we talked about it's not instant gratification, that you're going to have to wait to the end?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a great example. Going back to March 15th, 2020. The world was in shutdown. No one knew what was going to happen. At the time, I was managing 59 personal brands. And a good number of them were paid keynote speakers. all over the world. And they lost instantly with the shutdown. Already booked for the year, multiple 6, 7 figures.
Yeah.
Total meltdown city. And I reached out to every one of my clients via email, and I said, this weekend, I'm offering free calls just to find out where you're sitting at with your mindset. Let's look at the pivots you might have to make. Let's reinvent what that looks like. And really, the speaking world totally got reinvented due to COVID. And it ended up being a positive because the virtual events started emerging and many more people were paid clients rather than an auditorium or a small office. And so it ended up being not a bad thing about having to reinvent what that looks like. And I think when you hit a plateau, businesses hit plateaus. When we launch a personal brand and we have, a business model and multiple offers and all of the things, of course it's with good intentions. And sometimes the things that you think are going to take off may fall flat. And the things that you don't expect to take off totally take off. And so remembering that it's always a working model and you have to adjust. Our world changes rapidly. And it's really important for those clients to understand having to basically reassess everything on a very regular basis is normal. And making those small little adjustmts is really necessary to keep it moving and functioning properly.
Interesting. A lot of people hit plateaus, right? So first of all, no one's alone when you're at that plateau. We've all been there, done that. And I think too, we get so distracted as entrepreneurs and small business owners, the shiny object, right? Oh, we could do this. And it's so critical, you said, to stay in the lane, right? And find out what works. But I think too, and you've probably helped people identify, is when it starts to plateau, or let's say that's not working, like eject, right?
Absolutely.
Like don't keep going down a path that might not work, right? How detrimental can that be, right? We're talking about time.
Yeah, they look at it like, well, I invested all this time and money and I built out this program and it's not taking off and, oh, I'm such a failure. And they get into their heads. And really my job is to pull them out of that hole and say, okay, let's look at what's really not working. How can you present it differently? Let's look in a different direction. It doesn't mean you have to constantly reinvent. It really is small adjustments. That's all it really takes. But I think what happens is there's an expectation. When someone gets excited to launch their brand on all the platforms and, their new logo and all the new photos and colors,
right.
and they really have this massively high expectation. And there's nothing wrong with having an expectation as long as it's reasonable. It takes time, just like compounding. It takes time to scale. It just does. That's the nature of the beast.
So recapping there, it takes tons of time, and I just hope people people are out there that, like you said, doesn't happen in a month. It really is going to be months, and if maybe possibly years. So shout out to everyone that is still grinding, that is in a sense ready to grow their personal brand and ready to commit the long period of time.
Absolutely. There, so. Yeah, and remember, being an entrepreneur and a business owner can be somewhat isolating at times, especially when we're surrounded with people who aren't entrepreneurial. So that's really important too. Surround yourself.
They're done at 5.
with surround yourself with like-minded professional individuals as well. It's really like a roller coaster, and you just have to be willing to ride it.
Right. The amount of wealth of information you have presented today is amazing, and we're definitely aligned with a lot of our beliefs. If someone is at that point where they're ready to make an investment into themselves from a personal brand standpoint, how can they kind of get in touch with you, and how can they go down that path of learning more of what you can assist them with?
Pretty direct. My name, KristenCullen.com, is my website.
Okay.
KristenCullen.com. And if they want to book a free call, it's /free call.
Okay, cool.
It's really, again, clarity.
And it's an interview between both of you, right? Because obviously you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink.
Absolutely.
So you're obviously trying to figure out who they are, they're figuring out you are. And
yeah, I'm not for everyone. And that's what those calls are all about. And identifying if I'm a fit and if they're a fit with me. And really at the end of the day, people, if they're going to commit to the time and the investment, they have to be willing to commit to the work.
Yeah.
I actually have fired a few clients saying, look, I'm not going to babysit you. I'm not
Right.
going to chase you.
Right.
You know, I'm committed to your brand, but you're not.
Right.
And I don't want to waste each other's time. And I'm not going to take someone's money
Right.
just because.
Right. It won't help you. It won't help them. It's just going
Absolutely.
to be a waste. And that happens with any business.
It
Like how many
happens.
times does someone be like, hey, we're just not the right business for you. Right. And so when you're working with them so closely and so in depth, so personal, right? You're obviously learning
It's very intimate.
everything about them, right? You got to make sure it's a good fit. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast and you do want to work with Kristen or learn more about what she could do to help, reach out to her. Kristen, I want to say thank you so much. Obviously getting to know you and doing some work in the future here. I appreciate you coming on this podcast and dropping some amazing nuggets of knowledge for our listeners.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys. We'll see you guys at the on the next episode and Reagan Hard Report.